I'd now like to invite the panelists for the next session to turn on their cameras and their audio. Here we go, got a few people joining, brilliant. Great to see you all. So as we said, for the next hour or so, we will be focusing on how can industry and government collaborate effectively to promote AI adoption. We've obviously been spending a lot of time focusing and celebrating some of the brilliant examples of how AI is being applied currently, but as we know, and as you have seen in the reports, there are still some barriers that are in place which are preventing wider adoption. And we really want to look at how do we come together through various different stakeholders to work on addressing some of these challenges. Before I go to each of the panelists to do a short introduction of themselves, their organisation, and their thoughts on this topic, I'd just like to say we would like to make this session as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, if you're part of the audience today, then please do pop them in the Q&A function, and I will be monitoring that throughout the next hour to make sure that I'm asking your questions directly to our panel. So let's kick off then. Maybe if I could first turn to Sam, Sam from the Office for AI, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, a bit about your organisation, which I'm sure needs no introduction, and just your kind of opening thoughts or remarks on this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, hello there, and good to be here at an event which I think is really well timed given the current focus on AI, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So yeah, first of all, I'm Sam Cannicott, Deputy Director in DSIT, the new department that was established only, I think, about a month ago. It feels like a long time ago because so much has happened. But yeah, so I lead the Office for AI and policy work around AI as well as some of the funding work and other projects we have in relation to artificial intelligence, which, as I'm sure you all know, is one of the government's sort of top priorities in terms of technologies. And before that, I was Deputy Director of the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, which also sits in DSIT. So I've been working in this area for quite a while. And as I said, I think this is really well timed because just a couple of weeks ago, we announced a package of sort of investment in this space, including publishing the Science and Technology Framework, which set out sort of how we're building on lots of the programs that have come before it to sort of really focus on this area, including more investment in skills, taking forward some of the recommendations from the compute review and investing in that, as well as additional investment in research and development. And then last week, we built on that in the budget, where we talked a bit more about what we're doing in this space, including around establishing an AI sandbox, when we'll be bringing forward more details about that soon when we publish the AI regulation white paper, which we hope to publish very soon. And I guess all of that builds on the AI strategy, which I think you've maybe talked a little bit about today, but the National AI Strategy, which I think sort of has three components, and each one of them, I think, are relevant to this idea of collaboration. So we have sort of skills, I think, is an important element where we're getting the right sort of talent into the system, research and development. And the third one, which is taking up a lot of my time at the moment, is around regulation and governance, and how we regulate AI and get the balance right between addressing the risks that artificial intelligence can pose, but also making sure that we support innovation. So the regulatory framework that we set out last year and sort of very high level in our initial proposals is deliberately designed to get that balance right between supporting innovation but addressing risk, and doing that in a proportionate way. But alongside the sort of the regulatory approach, there's also softer sort of insurance and governance mechanisms, and I think that's another area where collaboration is really important. So that's comes through to the development of things like standards, risk assessments, where we know there's a load of really good practice already happening in industry that we as government want to learn from, and we're working closely with techUK and your members on a lot of that already to really understand what is already out there, where are the gaps in the system, particularly when it comes to standards, where there's, if we want to get standards right, it's really important that the right people are sat around the table developing those, including from industry, academia, civil society. And that's why last year we also announced the creation of the AI Standards Hub, which sits in the Alan Turing Institute, but that is set up specifically to sort of drive collaboration in this space and make sure the right people are engaged. And then I guess, as I said, sort of other mechanisms I think where we see collaboration is really important is fundamentally when we're designing the regulatory framework. We don't have all the answers, and I hope that people are here today, including sort of members from techUK and across industry, have felt that we've been try to engage industry as much as we can in that as we develop and design it, and we want to continue doing that. As I said, the AI sandbox that was announced last week in the budget, we think that is a really good opportunity to both provide direct support to innovators who want to develop and bring new products to market and directly support them, and government has an important role in enabling that. But through that sort of sandbox approach, I think we can then understand how the regulatory regime is operating and sort of use what goes through the sandbox to inform the rest of the system. And then we also, through this sort of package of measures, we announced or confirmed our funding in Bridge AI, which is around us supporting adoption of AI in sectors where current AI adoption is low, so areas like agriculture and construction. So again, that's sort of us, government, working directly with industry to support the adoption of AI sort of across the economy. I'll leave it for that for now. I think we'll probably pick up on some of that in the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I'd love to, and I really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to come and speak to us, because I know, particularly within the Office of AI, you're incredibly busy at the moment with various different initiatives. So thank you. And yes, I would also like to echo that, on behalf of techUK, we were very pleased and encouraged to see the announcements made in the budget last week and the importance of AI in terms of, as part of government's plan for growth. So that was fantastic to see. So thank you, Sam, for the intro. Maybe Sarah, if I could come over to you and your perspective from UKRI.
Yeah, of course. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sara El-Hanfy. I'm Head of AI and Machine Learning at Innovate UK, which is the UK's innovation agency focused on supporting business-led innovation. But as Catherine said, we're part of a larger organisation called UK Research and Innovation, or UKRI, which brings us together with the 7 research councils and Research England in order to create knowledge with impact effectively. So we operate across the whole of the UK and invest more than £7 billion a year into research and innovation by partnering with academia, industry and government. And at UKRI, we've been investing in AI research and innovation for many years. So we know the vibrant AI ecosystem that the UK has and the ways in which AI is already transforming areas such as health, education, energy. And my role specifically at Innovate UK is leading on our work developing and implementing innovation strategies that are focused specifically on AI and machine learning in order to deliver that economic and societal impact. So I guess when it comes to sort of reflecting on this kind of how industry and government can collaborate, I think you started with the where we've got to and the successes, which I think is really great. But I think normally I feel like I'm quite an optimistic person, but I feel like I'm going to be slightly the negative Nelly today. But I think, we've seen huge advances in AI research, and we have such a world-leading AI research ecosystem in the UK. And we also have seen huge successes in the UK AI private sector. But I think that the adoption of AI is behind where it could be. And so I think, and it's sort of uneven across sectors. So we've seen more kind of gravitating towards healthcare, financial services, for example, and maybe there are other sectors, as Sam alluded to, that perhaps haven't seen the same levels of adoption. But I think it is really important, if we're trying to address that, to understand what the barriers are. So firstly, I would say we really welcome the report from techUK, and the barriers that have been highlighted in that certainly tally with the barriers that we've been seeing and from the work that we've been taking to try to understand those. Businesses not really understanding the capabilities of technologies, or having expectations that perhaps don't match reality, and being unable to articulate those needs. So the adopter and the developer communities perhaps can't communicate with each other, and there's disconnect there, I think, which is a key thing that we see. I think also on the developer side, it's kind of that not being able to understand the consumer needs, particularly in new markets. So, the products that are being developed aren't necessarily meeting what the businesses need. And that can actually stifle investment for those businesses if they're unable to pitch a clear business case with convincing return on investment, or develop that kind of long-term vision that's required due to kind of like uncertainty about a market's infancy. And I think particularly with AI, because it's not simply a subset of digital technologies, it has often a longer commercialization, a longer product journey, and therefore that investment is so crucial. And also the skills gap. So I think that for me, I do see a big role for the collaborating between industry and government. I think there's real opportunities at that interface between academia, research and technology institutes and industry, both large corporates and SMEs. And the more we can stimulate engagement and partnerships between those that are developing AI and the end users, and particularly that long tail of SMEs, and really incentivize the development of those kind of new trusted AI solutions, that for me is going to be crucial in addressing some of those information asymmetries that we see between stakeholders, and kind of addressing some of those systemic barriers. What we have seen at Innovate UK is that collaborative R&D to develop AI is it's hugely important in enabling access to data and relevant data sets from end users, as well as perhaps incentivizing ethical and security considerations that can, not always, but can be neglected if it's a privately backed effort. So I think that, you know, there's a real benefit for adoption there in the creation of trust if government's involved in that. There's also been, you know, a lot of investment from government so far in skills. So the Turing Fellowships, Centres for Doctoral Training, AI conversion courses, building a fantastic pipeline for the UK. But I think there's definitely kind of more immediate term need for industry, and so actually that reskilling and upskilling of the wider workforce is crucial for industry, and also plays, I think, quite a valuable role in how do we access the more diversity in our AI workforces. I'm sure Wendy Hall will be grateful to hear brought up. So just to finish, as Sam was saying, actually in the budget there was the announcement of Bridge AI, which is the adoption and diffusion programme that Innovate UK is delivering. So that's really very much about addressing those barriers, very much aligned with the report, but I'm sure we'll come back to that in more detail through the course of today's session.
Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate those observations. Completely agree with your point now, the need to focus on that kind of long tail of companies that maybe could benefit from AI as a technology, but just don't know where to begin and how do we support them. And yes, you mentioned Bridge AI. I know this is an area that you're focusing on and prioritizing this year. So would love to, as part of this conversation today, hear a bit more about that and maybe how some of the organizations on this call can get more involved. So yeah, let's definitely come back to that. Maybe Gilbert, if I can now hand over to you for a bit of an intro from your perspective at BT and where you come from on this topic.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Catherine. So I'm Gilbert Owus, Data and AI Director for BT's Corporate Units, Networks and OpenReach. My responsibility is twofold. First, to make sure that we have easy access to good quality data for optimizing decision making. And second is to use AI to deliver business and societal value. BT has been using AI in its operation for over 25 years. Our use of AI is underpinned by a strong R&D program, and this is where we collaborate with several leading AI universities, organizations, the public sector. I'm based in Suffolk, BT Labs, and we work very closely with Suffolk County Council and other councils across the country. Vendors, we work with vendors, Innovate UK, UKR. We do that as part of our engagement with our universities, and of course standards when it comes to standards with organizations like Telemanagement Forum, members of techUK and BSI. What most people wouldn't know is that BT was ranked #1 in a recent report by the UK Patent Office for filing AI patents in the UK. These inventions are being used in our service and network operations, in our cyber security operations, and in our drive to become net zero for our business by the end of March 2031. And when we started AI in the late 90s, the focus wasn't about the technology. It was the right tool for the right job. And we needed a way to optimize schedules for our engineers. We needed a way to better predict and diagnose faults and to be able to honor appointments that we have given our customers. is the demand for AI increasing? Of course, we do see that both internally and through our engagements with customers and other organizations. So within BT, at our BT Labs, we host about 60,000 visitors, and these span across large corporates, SMEs, local governments, and schools each year. Okay, so 60,000 visitors come to see us each year. And these visitors are interested to find out about what BT uses AI for, and also we get to hear about their AI journey. Clearly, the report from techUK, the barriers that were highlighted there reflects what these visitors tell us. Data quality being one of them, funding, what do you do with intellectual property, trust, concerns that all need to be addressed to enable effective collaboration. And that isn't stopping us from collaborating. There are a lot of opportunities for us to exploit AI in BT. And we are a very resource-rich organization. We are the second largest fleet operator in the UK, for example, and most of our efforts is to make sure that we use AI to optimize the way we utilize our resources and processes to deliver better service outcomes for our customers whilst transforming our cost base. What I would just like to highlight on is that, each organization exists, whether it's profit, non-profit. We need to start looking at how to address those objectives that they have in light of collaboration. So if it's for profit, what do we need to do to incentivize organizations to share data or even collaborate on building models and so on for universities and the like. So yes, the desire to collaborate is there, but these concerns need to be addressed properly if we are to get them done effectively.
Thank you, Gilbert. Really appreciate those opening observations. And it's great to have an organisation, obviously, who's completely at the coalface of this technology and how it's being developed. So, from a practical perspective, great to have you here and to unpack some of those remarks you've just mentioned as part of the next few questions. Maybe, Laura, if I could hand over to you finally, just for your opening remarks and to give a perspective from BenevolentAI.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you to techUK for the invite and for the wonderful work on the report. My name is Laura Taddei. I'm Director of Business Affairs for BenevolentAI, which you have just heard from our great VP of AI. It's an AI-enabled clinical stage drug discovery and development company. I'm gonna, at the moment, my focus at the company is on communications, strategy, ESG, but also working at the development of our internal work stream on AI ethics and engagement with trade unions. I'm not gonna delve too much into the details of what you have already heard from Nicola, but maybe I would say stop on some key highlights that I think are relevant for the panel. So while on the AI subject, our work at BenevolentAI really aims to use artificial intelligence to improve the understanding of disease biology. We have over the years built a robust data architecture and knowledge graph that can capture, Nicola showed you a slide, more than 85 different data sources all across biomedical data, and then provide drug discovery scientists with AI tools that can reason across this vast and ever-growing corpus of data. Now, the important thing to highlight here is that we do not want and we do not use AI to automate processes or as a substitute of human intelligence, but rather to augment human intelligence and then help scientists navigate the complexities of disease biology. We have our own internal pipeline, again, as Nicola was saying, all AI platform generated of 15 named drug programs, the most advanced in ulcerative colitis and atopic dermatitis. And then we also have 10 exploratory programs. In addition to that, we have a fruitful collaboration with AstraZeneca with 5 novel targets already delivered into AstraZeneca's portfolio. But maybe the thing that I can expand a little bit in terms of what Nicola has mentioned is, although we're not a drug repurposing company, but what we did in terms of our work with COVID-19, where over the course really of 48 hours, back when the pandemic had just started and unfortunately there were no vaccines in sight, we run our AI models and we try to identify already existing drugs that could actually potentially be used to treat COVID-19. And again, as I was saying, in a matter of 48 hours, thanks to our AI models, we discovered the rheumatoid arthritis treatment baricitinib, which is marketed by Eli Lilly as Olumiant, that could potentially be used for this purpose. So although its anti-inflammatory property was well known, we actually discovered an additional off-target antiviral effect. Fast forward all the way to now, baricitinib has received FDA approval and it's now recommended as a COVID treatment from the World Health Organization. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this example is literally to show that there's huge potential, of course, in artificial intelligence, and the benevolent approach is one of the ways that we believe artificial intelligence can be a driving force behind innovation in the UK, especially to supercharge growth. So I'm looking forward to this discussion today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate those opening remarks. I'd now like to just kick off with a couple of questions. I think very happy to make it sort of open and for people to kind of come in as they see fit. I'd also just like to remind the audience as well that if you do have any questions specifically for the panel, just to type them into the Q&A function and I will continue to monitor that. Maybe let's, I think to kind of make sure we start off looking at the background and the context of this. Obviously, if you look at techUK's report, the whole emphasis of it is talking about the importance of increasing AI adoption. But I'd just like to maybe unpack that slightly. We talk a lot about the potential economic benefits. There's some stats out there around that. I think an estimated 10% increase in GDP within the next 7 years, so by 2030. But what are the, beyond kind of like the economic metrics, what are some of the other significant benefits that we think an increase in AI adoption can have? Maybe, Sara, if I could come to you on that first.
Yeah, of course. So I think, as we've seen from your lightning talks, AI is such a cross-cutting technology that it has the potential to deliver huge benefits across the economy, across society. So, obviously GDP is the kind of the big picture, but if you take it down to an individual business, it's got the benefit to help improve productivity and boost productivity and increase competitiveness through developing products and services that are more tailored or better tailored towards customer needs. So I think on an individual business, there's benefits, and that obviously has impact in, the number of jobs and all those sorts of smaller metrics that we might look at. But it's also, we're hearing from BenevolentAI and, the whole drug discovery piece. Health, absolutely huge benefits in better ways to detect and prevent conditions, but also actually better diagnosis, better drugs to treat those conditions. But even, we go to climate change and better ways of kind of helping us to meet our net zero targets. So I think in AI for science kind of basically presents us kind of opportunities across the spectrum. But one of the things I think that is quite interesting when we look at GDP is actually how it's expected to also boost GDP in local economies. So very much supporting the sort of the national AI pillar 2 about how, how do we actually make sure everyone benefits, and local economies are expected to have a 26% increase in local GDP. So I think it's, harnessing it in the right way. There's huge societal benefits as well as those economic benefits.
Absolutely. And Sara, I know obviously as part of this Bridge AI work, you're looking at maybe where there's areas of untapped potential across different markets and sectors. Without kind of preempting that research, are there particular sectors you think we need to be focusing on going forward to make sure we see greater adoption?
Yeah, so as Sam mentioned in his opening remarks, initially the Bridge AI programme is going to focus on agriculture, construction, transport and logistics, and parts of the creative industries. Obviously, there are other sectors that are kind of maybe less mature on their journey, but that's where we're starting, certainly at this phase of the project and the programme.
Exciting stuff. Thank you, Sara. And maybe Laura, coming back to you from a healthcare perspective, how or where are you seeing kind of the benefits of AI adoption across the healthcare sector? I imagine it's a bit of a patchwork, right? It's not, some areas of some brilliant work, but also areas where AI as a technology is really needed and could drive, an increased value, for example, in the NHS.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would go back really to the premise in terms of looking ahead, and which is data. AI is driven by data. It underpins innovation. So the more data we can actually use to train AI, the greater its capabilities. If I bring it back to the specific core focus of Benevolent, but really let's bring it back to healthcare in general and to the UK then specifically. I personally see great potential in the areas of chronic and rare diseases. I mean, we need to keep into account that there are, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment, 3.5 million people in the UK, which are currently suffering from rare diseases, which is a big number. I mean, it's 1 in 17 people. If more health data were accessible to scientists and then AI tools then were put in their hands in order to research on these specific elements, then I believe it's possible then 10 years from now we can see successful AI-assisted discoveries really in this space. So my take is that if we were to incentivize research in this area specifically, even bringing the currently non-centralized data sets together, going back to the concept and importance of data, and more importantly then giving scientists AI tools to use in their research and to reason across this data, then we could potentially make a big impact in the UK in this specific remit.
Thank you, Laura. Interesting to see the observation of particularly areas where, chronic illnesses could be an area where greater AI adoption could obviously have a tremendous impact. So thank you. Maybe Gilbert, if I could come on to you, and then obviously Sam, I've got a couple of questions for you as well. Where are you, Gilbert, from your line of work? Where are you seeing the most benefits when it comes to AI? But also, how do you see that maybe changing and evolving over time as well?
Sure. For us, to be honest, AI is a means to an end. Okay, the end being to clearly articulate either the business or societal benefits, and some of these have been highlighted by the previous panelists. What we have seen in terms of benefits in our AI journey centers around 3 main areas. One is to optimize our cost base. I touched on this earlier on, that we are a very resource-rich organization and waste is costly. So how can we make sure that we optimize our cost base and improve productivity? The second is around sustainability ambitions, being able to hit our net zero targets by 2031. And then the third, it's around our revenue growth. Of course, we exist to make profits, so we are looking at ways to use AI to help along those lines. So let me quickly highlight a few examples of where we are using AI. So the first around optimizing our cost base, and we are rolling out fiber and 5G AI. It's very key to ensuring that we optimize the build and installation of these networks. We are also looking at how we can optimize the way our engineers deliver service, so the right job at the right time. And what we are seeing benefits of using AI, it's an increase of additional 400,000 jobs a year being completed by our engineers, and also leading to a reduction of around 17% in travel, which has led to 36 kilotons of CO2 emissions being reduced every year. Over the years, seen around £500 million in cost saving. Why am I saying this? AI, I earlier on touched on that AI is a means to an end. If you are not able to articulate the business case, then there is no reason or no justification for devoting our efforts to using AI. So these are some of the benefits there. Sustainability. On sustainability, BT consumes about 1% of UK's electricity. Okay, and 95% of this comes from our networks. So again, we're using AI to help migrate customers off our PSTN and 3G networks. So they consume quite a lot of electricity. I touched on that we are the second largest fleet operator in the UK. We have around 30,000 vehicles in our fleet. Again, electrification of the fleet due to complete by 2030. And we are using AI to help us in this regard. First, how do we make sure that we have charging points optimally placed across our estate? And then second is, how do we ensure that when engineers are delivering or going about their work, they wouldn't run out of charge, or the vehicles wouldn't run out of charge and impact SLAs and so on. So again, using AI to help in this regard. And then, of course, on the revenue side, we have a cyber security platform called Eagle Eye that we sell mainly for our multinational customers. And what we have done is embed automated anomaly detection, essentially to help predict and detect cyber attacks. There is still more to do. We're excited about what generative AI and large language models have to offer for us. We believe that they can help in our software engineering space. So we talk about AI and all the other part of it, it's engineering, okay? And making sure that we do that effectively, it's key for us. And also, we use a lot of third-party contractors and suppliers to work for us on our networks. How can we use AI to help with the assurance process? Of course, we work with a number of organizations, and as I mentioned earlier on, public sector, education, transport, all our sectors that we are looking at how we can help share some of the work that we've been doing internally with them.
Thank you, Gilbert. And I completely agree with your point around the need to be able to articulate the business case, right at the beginning. If off the bat you can't get that right, then you're not going to get people adopting AI. So I think that's a really, really valid point. Sam, maybe if I could come on to you now, just talking more generally about, I guess, the UK's AI adoption journey. So I guess when we're talking about sort of different technologies and their adoption stages, they tend to, I think, mimic a bit of an S-curve, of adoption, which is you have a few pioneers who at the beginning adopting the technology, but at a very low level. Then we get a bit of an acceleration where everyone realizes the importance of the technology, and then a bit of a plateau, a bit of a tail off as, the market becomes a bit more saturated and maybe the benefits or the level of adoption at least kind of curves off. Where do you see kind of the UK in its AI adoption journey, given all the kind of work you're doing in this space and all the work you're doing engaging with industry? And maybe as a second point, if I can be greedy, how do you envisage that changing in the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I guess you're right. I think some of the work we've been doing recently suggests that around, I think it's 15% of businesses sort of see themselves as AI adopters, that's predicted to increase massively, like threefold probably over the next 10, 15 years. And even then, it's not clear what that means, because increasingly AI is going to just be so embedded, or elements of AI are going to be so embedded in people's lives that, every business is going to be using AI in some way. And many already will be if they're working online, for example. So it's sort of, we're seeing, I guess, the sort of sophistication of the technology being used likely to increase a lot, I think. And I guess, as others have said, there's a range of applications there that could be used. And I guess there's two things that we're thinking about when we are looking at adoption. It mirrors some of what's come through in your report, that we know that lack of confidence and trust is a really important barrier that needs to be addressed. And I think there's a couple of things there that we're doing. The focus at the moment on developing our approach to how we regulate AI and the wider governance regime is really important, because that's how you build a sort of trustworthy system that consumers and those developing and deploying AI need to know that the sort of the regulation and the framework is there that guides responsible uses of the technology and addresses the risks. And we also recognize that as the technology evolves, the risks may change as well. So there may be risks that we're not aware of at the moment. And so we do see that sort of future sort of horizon scanning being really important. And one of the things that we set out last year when we were talking about our regulatory framework was this idea that it needs to be agile, because that agility is really important as the technology changes, but underpinned by a set of principles to sort of retain that structure as well. So we think that's a really key component of enabling future adoption. And then I think the other area which I touched on was the sort of this assurance side as well. So not necessarily all about regulation, but basically if you're wanting to purchase or use new AI systems, how do you know they'll do what they say they'll do? So what does assurance look like in the space? So we think technical standards and governance standards have a really important role here, but are also open to, well, we are also actively exploring other approaches, like, what do risk assessments look like and all that sort of stuff. And then, we're now in the stage of adoption where, if you take the last, I guess, sort of 5 or more years, there's been a huge focus on sort of what does ethical AI look like, what are the principles. We're now in the space where we need to be sort of accepting those principles, but then thinking, what does the practical application of those look like? And that's where, again, governance and regulation and stuff like standards comes in, because we talk about transparency, explainability, fairness a lot, but what does that really look like? How do you measure that? How do you apply that? So I think that's the stage we're on in terms of the wider regulatory governance piece. It's all about improving trust and confidence, which I think is a really important element to it. And then the second bit, just very briefly, is the skills gap, which I know you highlight in your report as well. So our businesses and all organizations, are they ready to adopt AI? Do they have the skills they need to not all be necessarily experts in AI, but understand the things like, how do you ask the right questions when you're procuring it? How do you govern it? Are your governance arrangements set up enough so you're comfortable and confident that the technology is doing what you want it to do? So the skills sort of across the piece, from, yes, we need technical skills, and we're doing a lot of the work we're doing there in terms of funding conversion courses and PhD places that we touched on earlier is really important. But I think there's a wider thing that is that we as government can do in working with organisations like techUK to sort of promote awareness around what does effective governance in the space look like more broadly.
Absolutely, Sam. I really like that sort of multifaceted approach. Some areas where they may need sort of slightly more scrutiny or potential future regulation, and other areas where a slightly more light touch self-assessment approach may also be appropriate. So thank you. I'd maybe now like to take the opportunity for the other sort of 3 panelists, whilst we've also got Sam here from the Office for AI, to get their views or their perspective on what they'd like to see, within the upcoming AI white paper on kind of regulation. What are their kind of goals and ambitions for the white paper, which we are expecting imminently and are very excited to see? So maybe, Sarah, if I can come across to you, what do you hope to see addressed within the AI white paper?
Yeah, I mean, I think to date, the government's position has been really sensible. But I guess moving forward, if I have to have a wish list, I think it's just that need to de-risk the regulatory changes. So kind of helping organizations to understand what good looks like, as well as kind of having that guidance around how you implement it. I think we've seen with the EU's AI Act that actually there are a number of tech startups that this is unknown territory for them, and potentially puts the brakes on progress. So I think having those benefits of the effects of regulation kind of clearly disseminated, as well as kind of implementation for SMEs, particularly because they don't have the resources necessary to throw at getting this implemented. So it's kind of balancing that sort of the need for regulation with that kind of unnecessary burden that particularly impacts SMEs, so we don't deter investment into the UK. And then if I just a slight extension on that is just that kind of international alignment with the right partners. I think that's kind of a key factor for me in kind of reducing that regulatory burden for business.
Absolutely. And many of these companies that we both work with on a daily basis don't just operate solely here in the UK, they're operating globally. So that alignment across jurisdictions, incredibly important. Thank you, Sarah. Maybe Gilbert, if I could come across to you, what are your hopes and ambitions for the upcoming UK AI white paper? What's on your wish list?
Yeah, of course, we welcome the government's announcement that it will accept all the recommendations found in the digital technologies section of Sir Patrick's review. In particular for us, enabling meaningful and effective collaboration across the UK ecosystem. Okay, so we'd like to see policymakers working hand in hand. I think Sam touched on that with research, business, and the academic ecosystem to ensure that regulation reflects the state of the art. We think that the AI Council can play a critical role here. And also, we welcome the multi-regulator sandbox for AI. Companies like ourselves, develop products and services across multiple sectors. And divergence among regulators would be heavily burdensome. So this will help bring some comfort to us. And we welcome the clarity on the relationship between intellectual property law and generative AI, because again, we collaborate with a number of partners, and just to have that assurance, the confidence that whatever it's being developed, clear ownership, who owns what will be of great help to us. I think Sam also touched on like a checklist. If you are procuring AI, do you know what is in the tin, as it were? You have some observations along these lines. So Forrester cites that the global AI software market will grow to $37 billion by 2025. I mean, there will be a number of vendors offering AI products and services in this place. And our question is there a standard way of assessing these vendors? Some touched on that. And we would want to see some assurance and certification, for these systems, and also training programs to help trust, to help with employees to check the trustworthiness of AI. I know some work that is being done by Validate AI, Imperial College, and the Oral Society is along these lines. Yeah.
Thank you, Gilbert. Yeah, I think great to hear positive soundings. And yes, I'm sure that's all stuff that Sam and his colleagues at the Office for AI are thinking about. So thank you. Maybe Laura, if I could hand over to you and your perspective from obviously BenevolentAI, a reasonable sized company, but not maybe as big as our colleagues here at BT. So, from maybe more of a slightly smaller size organization, what are your perspectives on the imminent publication of the white paper and what you'd hope to be seen addressed as part of it?
Yeah, I mean, smaller size for sure, but I couldn't agree more with both of my other panelists. I think that the key here is really striking the right balance between governance and promoting innovation for British business, which by all means, I know it's tough and it's not an easy exercise, but we are in the right direction. So I would love to see an AI white paper that can address these concerns, that can enable innovation while also ensuring that the responsible and ethical usage underpins all uses of artificial intelligence in the United Kingdom. And one approach I would say is to practically really show, with, for example, creating case studies, that these responsible usages of artificial intelligence are not a barrier to innovation, as sometimes I have to say they're perceived. But actually a means to enable it. And then to go back to what Sam was saying in terms of AI principles, I couldn't agree more in terms of we would love also to see an AI white paper that is very practically oriented towards, great, we have a whole series, I would say, of really important ethical principles that can define what AI even is and what responsible AI is. How can we now bring them into action, whether in big realities, looking at BT, or in small realities like ours, or less big, let's say.
Absolutely, sorry, I was on mute there. Apologies. Yes, no, completely agree. Smaller, but very mighty and very powerful as well. So maybe Sam, if I could come back to you, obviously you alluded to a bit of this in your answer to the last question around some of the work you're doing when it comes to collaboration with industry. I was wondering if you could maybe highlight a few more examples of that to the people on this call, where you've been kind of collaborating to date, what the impact has been, and how we can take some of that work forward as well.
Yeah, well, I know one of the big collaborations at the moment is, of course, with techUK on our assurance work, which is actually run by the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, so not quite my team anymore, but where we're developing a portfolio of assurance techniques, which is built on understanding what practice already happens in business that we can sort of showcase to sort of start developing a sense of what is good practice in this space, what tools and techniques are already there that others can use, and start getting a sort of start promoting them, but also understanding the strengths and weaknesses of these different things as well. And that's, we have to, the only way we'll get that right is through really close engagement with business, because as others have said, we want to make sure these tools are designed properly to enable innovation and not to stifle it, but to exactly that, get the balance right so they are seen as enablers and helpful tools to sort of both drive innovation and support adoption as well. So I think that's a really good example. Just I guess a couple of others. We mentioned Sandbox there, which was we're taking forward Patrick Valance's recommendation there, which I think is a sort of an opportunity for collaboration. But also both at the CDI and was also announced in the budget last week, we'll be developing an AI prize challenge. And I think there is another example of how government can use its role as sort of a convening role to sort of catalyze innovation across the economy. We're still working, we'll be sort of bringing forward details of how that's going to run soon, but that's, I think, a way of sort of supporting collaboration both with the research community, business and government as well. We've recently run a similar prize challenge. Again, it was the Centre for Data Ethics that ran it on privacy enhancing technologies, and they're running a prize challenge, but working really closely with business to think about how these new technologies can be used in a medical healthcare context, but also to address money laundering in the financial system. So I think there's sort of mechanisms like that we can deploy that help sort of drive collaboration, as well as obviously working as closely as we can with business and through these sorts of forums to sort of test thinking, develop our thinking, and get challenge as well. So I also encourage everyone that after the white paper is published to engage as closely as they can. And obviously we'll want feedback, and there'll be a consultation coming out of that, which we encourage everyone to engage with as well.
Yeah, wonderful. And at techUK, we're very happy to be that conduit between, a majority of the tech sector and the Office for AI to facilitate those discussions. Absolutely. And just for those of you that may have not seen all the announcements in the budget, of which I know there was many. I think, Sam, you're alluding to it's the Manchester Prize Challenge, isn't it? Which was it's a £1 million kind of pot of cash for the next 10 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, the Manchester challenge. So it's a $1 million a year where we'll be running, and we'll be bringing forward more details soon. But yeah, the
Fantastic.
idea is to use that to sort of support innovation.
Excellent. And I expect we may see some of these things unpacked in a bit more detail as part of the white paper. Is that expected?
Yeah, wait and see.
Okay, excellent. So I'm being impatient, and I am just very, very excited to read it. Fantastic. Thank you, Sam. Maybe, Sarah, if I could come back to you. Obviously, there is a tremendous amount of stuff going on within government, predominantly across the Office for AI, but in other areas as well. Do you feel like, within government, but also more broadly, do you feel like we have the right sort of structures in place to enable collaboration for those responsible innovation purposes, or do you think more needs to be done in this space?
That's a very interesting question. I think it's a very fast-moving space, so I don't think we can kind of rest on our laurels and stand still and assume that we have everything we need and that it will remain fit for purpose. So I think we have a lot of very positive interventions and a lot of positive mechanisms, but I think there's also that need to actively listen to the ecosystem and ensure that we remain aware of what the gaps are or where new gaps might emerge, because as the technology evolves, things that were fit for purpose might not be fit for purpose anymore. So I think that's really key for ensuring the UK sort of maintains and progresses its position in the space. I think there are a number of existing interventions that are very well targeted, and we've touched on a couple of them, but I'll just kind of run through some of the others. But the part of the budget announcement was a technologies mission fund, and that was looking to invest in key underpinning technologies in the UK, and there's an AI strand to that investment, which has a number of different interventions aimed, from responsible AI, so investing more into that space, through to the Bridge AI investment that we've already talked about, as well as areas like AI for health and AI for net zero. So there are a number of kind of interventions and mechanisms that are already funded and already in place, but I think it would be naive of us to assume that was always going to be kind of, you know, if we keep doing the same thing, that's not necessarily going to lead us to the progress that we'd like to see.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah, for those observations. Laura, what is your perspective on this? Do we have it right as it currently stands?
Short answer would be yes, but yeah, no, of course I believe that we do have it right. There is still work to do in terms of really making sure that we do have agreed common standards on what even constitutes responsible usage of or even innovation with artificial intelligence. We're in a period where we're seeing a lot of national AI strategy being unveiled, and I feel like we need to create proper frameworks for AI governance that we can be sure that will outlaw malicious uses, possible uses of artificial intelligence. Let's just think about, for example, the spreading of disinformation. And on this specific remit, I think that this is essential in terms of collaboration, both within the UK, but also internationally. And we do have the right structures. Let's just think about, for example, the work that the Office for AI is doing when it comes to the global partnership on AI, on collaborating with governments and different states on the practical projects around the responsible AI and the responsible both development and deployment of AI. So multi-stakeholder collaboration, I think, is the key to really make sure that we continue getting it right, let's say. When it comes to then the relationship between government and people, the other thing that I would want to highlight is the need to keep involving as much as possible public in data governance, which can involve increasing people's knowledge in how their data is used. I think we touch upon also in the report that we're launching today. But also giving actual people the power to determine how their data is used. So these are the key elements that I would highlight.
Thank you, Laura. And finally, Gilbert, what is your perspectives? Have we got this right, particularly maybe focusing from like a regulatory perspective? What are BT's thoughts and takes on that?
Yeah, well, good progress is being made. I think the key highlight is how do we operationalize whatever is coming out of these collaborations, okay? And I would like to illustrate this with what we are battling with or working with internally. So there are two sides to this: data, of course, and then the models. And for us, how well are we operationalizing controls related to data, and then also engendering trust in the models and we develop, okay, for consumption. And I think it's helpful to look at this from an audit point of view. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, if we are being audited, how well would we do? Okay, and that should influence the way we engineer these systems. So within BT, we have taken steps to facilitate trust of AI systems among our stakeholder community, be it internal or external. The foundation for us is having a responsible tech framework and governance that reflects our objective to be the world's most trusted connector of people, devices, and machines. Okay, and the way we've gone about implementing that is that we have data councils representing the different business units. So case in point, if we are developing a use case requiring colleague or employee data, a case needs to be made to the colleague data council, and there will be a number of questions and that needs to be answered to give them assurance that we are going to use the data or the model for the right purposes. And there are frameworks around privacy impact assessments and solution impact assessments. So for us, it's more operationalizing for these controls to ensure that at the end of the day, we get the desired outcome when the data sets and the models are in operations. So trust by design, okay, it's really what influences the way we go about engineering these systems.
Thank you, Gilbert. And that's a brilliant segue onto what I want to make as my final question, which is you touch on trust and public trust and confidence. And it does very much feel, if you've had a chance to read the report, that also, you know, sort of building public trust and confidence in the use of technology is almost like the golden thread that, you know, getting that right is essential if we are to see greater AI adoption across the UK. So maybe starting with Laura, and then I'll kind of take everyone in turn. It'd be great to get an understanding from you. What should we be prioritizing now in order to ensure that we are getting greater levels of kind of public trust and confidence in the adoption of AI technology?
Well, yeah, the two key things that I would highlight are explainability and transparency, which I'm sure are going to surprise no one, but I really do think that are the key here. We can see that at least currently there is widespread skepticism, also optimism, but skepticism about the future of AI. And I think that this is oftentimes just pure and simple due to a lack of understanding of how AI works and how it can play in the interest of citizens rather than the opposite. Let's just think about ChatGPT, and one of the main concerns lately being really a fear that automation of processes in the workplace using the technology, such as AI, will undermine workers rather than help them. So if we bring this environment back to the concept that I just mentioned, I think that business, especially in collaboration with government, can really dispel people's fears by creating and driving, for example, awareness campaigns to increase the knowledge about artificial intelligence, empowering people with information. And this is a concept that, again, has already been mentioned multiple times. I remember a report, I don't remember honestly if it was from 2020 or 2021, but from the Oxford Commission on Good Governance and Artificial Intelligence, that explicitly invited government and businesses to collaborate together at the implementation of awareness campaigns for citizens. So this is probably something that now we actually need to act upon and start working on. And in terms of transparency, people should also always have access to the proper practical information and precise information about the ways that their data are used by artificial intelligence, especially if I bring it back to BenevolentAI or to the healthcare sector in general, but especially in a health research context. And also be made aware of the actions being taken to eliminate data biases. So these elements combined, I think that can truly foster an element of trust from the public.
Thank you, Laura. Some brilliant call to actions there as well, so thank you. Maybe Sarah, if I could come over to you, what do you think we need to be prioritising in order to get greater levels of, you know, public trust and confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Laura when she said about empowering people with information. I think, you know, raising awareness of the current capabilities and building capabilities within industry is going to be key. And I think for us at BridgeAI, part of the BridgeAI program is not just focusing on the funding of the AI solutions and the sector-specific AI solutions. It's also about kind of developing those sector capabilities. So there will be a kind of a diverse upskilling program to try and sort of address both aspects in tandem. But as well as that, I think we've touched upon the need to be able to kind of verify AI and the outputs. And I think, you know, the UK has a lot of really interesting companies in that kind of AI assurance space. So I think kind of continuing to develop that market will be very valuable. And Innovate UK does have a current competition for anyone who's in that space. So what I'll do is I'll pop links to more information about BridgeAI and also that specific transformative technologies competition in the chat. So if anyone's interested, they can go and find out more.
Yes, absolutely. Please do. And we can also circulate those links post-event. So yeah, thank you, Sarah. Gilbert, what are your sort of closing remarks on this point?
Yeah, I think, I mean, viewing this from a transformational point of view, because AI is disruptive, okay, it's a technology, and I would probably call out, in addition to what both Sarah and Laura have highlighted, that you need exec level sponsorship, you know, or someone at board level that has an appreciation for AI, and even better, and the skills, the expertise, okay, to be able to influence his or her colleagues to invest into AI programs. And then, of course, if we view it through the lens of transformation, how do we make sure that we bring all the impacted stakeholders on board, okay, because that will engender trust. I remember one of my first AI products, that projects that I worked on, just trying to, and back then we're using evolutionary type techniques, generating schedules, and the end user didn't get it because each time there was a different configuration of the schedule. I mean, the same outcome, but different configuration. And very good. This was way back then, before explanation became required for what is done as black boxes. But we had to quickly develop ways to expose what the engine was, the models were doing, visualize them, and bring them on board. And that has been the way we work, bring them along the journey, because at the end of the day, it's going to impact people, it will impact processes, it will impact the system stack, okay, where we embed these. And we just need to look at it through the lens of transformation, bring all the stakeholders on board. I think, you know, the wider public, if the capabilities that impact the wider public, but even within an organization, treat it as a transformation program.
Thank you, Gilbert. And Sam, I'd like to give the final kind of closing remarks from the panel over to you on your thoughts and take on how we build greater public trust and confidence.
Yeah, well, I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I think, as I said, it comes down now to the sort of the practical application of these things, particularly around, I think, explainability and transparency and what that really looks like, and how we can, and you know, really interested to see how businesses are also engaging the public with testing and developing things in this space, because you know it's an emerging field based on the technical side, but also what does meaningful transparency and explainability look like for people. And I think there's a risk here that we try and oversimplify things, and it becomes a sort of communications exercise rather than building meaningful trust and a proper sort of dialogue with people. So really keen to pick up on that. And as I said, the other bit that I think is crucial to trust is having the sort of the right regulatory and governance framework, and that's obviously on government to do. I guess just finally, I think the interesting thing in this space is just how we can have a much more opportunities-focused conversation. I thought your report was really good, where it sets out, you know, some of the really compelling use cases of AI that are happening across the economy, because I think too often we see sort of risk-based conversations, and obviously there are risks and we need to address them, but actually that we sometimes forget the opportunities here and the potential transformative impact of the technology for good, including sort of creating better jobs or safer jobs. And when we think about the disruptive impact of the technology, and we need to make sure that those, you know, the positives of this are also given an equal hearing to the risks that we also need to address. And AI can also obviously play a role in addressing some of those risks as well, which is interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank all of the panelists for the last hour or so for your great insight and intellect that you've brought to the conversation. So thank you. And of course, to all the lightning talks and the fireside chat that we had with Dame Wendy Hall earlier this afternoon. So a huge thank you to all the speakers, to all the panelists. We look forward to techUK continuing this conversation, particularly given the imminent publication of the UK AI white paper. So look forward to engaging with you all on that as soon as that's been launched and published. I'd also just like to take the opportunity as we close to say a huge thank you to Fazana from our team and the AI Adoption Working Group. She's sitting next to me, so I'm not going to look at her, for you know, putting together this report. It, as you would expect, with something of such, you know, high quality, it takes a tremendous amount of time behind the scenes to pull something like this together. And I do, as Sue mentioned at the beginning, think it's a true celebration of some of the cutting edge pioneering work that's happening across the AI ecosystem. So huge thank you to Fazana. And finally, of course, if you haven't had a chance to check out the paper, it is now live on our website. So I'm sure one of my colleagues will pop a link in the chat for you to have a check out of that. Really keen to hear your thoughts and opinions on the report. So if you would like to contact the team directly to discuss the activities involved in that, then please do so. And finally, my final sort of shameless plug is to let you know that we are obviously continuing this conversation and the celebration of the brilliant work that's happening in this space with our AI Campaign Week. So this is an annual annual campaign that we run every year in April time. It's going to be run this year between the 17th and the 21st of April, where each day across that week we will be looking at the focusing in on the AI adoption across different markets and sectors. So Monday, I think it's healthcare and life sciences, and there's the environment, financial services, transport, you name it. So if you've got existing blogs, reports, you'd like to get involved in podcasts or events, then please reach out to either myself or my colleague Carmen, and we will love to get you involved in that. But for now, I'd like to say a huge thank you again to everyone for getting involved. And yes, have a brilliant rest of day and speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.